Hello, welcome everyone. This is A, the Mystic Rose Tarot. I am here to do a breakdown of our 2021 Major Arcana archetype card for the year, which is the Hierophant. And what I'm going to do is, if you watch my previous video, I just completed my interpretation and insight to my Wheel of the Year reading. Basically, a Wheel of the Year reading is a general overview of what the next 12 months will be looking like for this year. So I did it astrologically, and I did it by each month. So I broke that down, and I gave an explanation of each month in relation to the major arcana that was drawn for each month, and its relationship to the current month and that archetype. And so, for instance, I'm not going to go on this for too long because I want to focus on the Hierophant. But for instance, for January, which is normally the month of Capricorn, I got the Emperor. Okay, so Capricorn is earth energy. It's related to Saturn. The card I pulled was the Emperor. And it's from a deck, the Tarot of the Holy Light, that infuses different signs and planetary references for each of the astrological and also planetary associations. So I kind of give my overview for the Emperor card, which is Fire Aries, placed in the month of January for this month, placed in the sign of where it's Capricorn and Earth, and we're dealing with structure and form and whatnot, while Aries is expansive. It wants to move, doesn't like restriction. But in this reading, I give my insight for the first few months, the challenges that I have with different archetypes in relation to the signs for each month. So take a look at that. It's pretty interesting. And I give an explanation as to how I think, or how I think and feel 2021 is going to be for me. So it's pretty interesting. I haven't done a Wheel of the Year reading for me in a long, long time. And I felt it was time to do this. So I will also be doing another version of the Wheel of the Year, but working more with the influences of the Sabbats for pagan and Wiccan holidays. So that'll be in the future. I want to catch up with some stuff that I have here. So that's just a little bit of information as to my Wheel of the Year reading for 2021 and the next reading that I'm going to do for, I call it the Witch's Wheel of the Year, in relation to the seasons and the shifts that we go through through these 4 seasons of the year, and the Sabbats, the holidays that come with it. Okay, so with that aside, let's focus on the Hierophant. Now I did I pulled 9 cards from various decks, and I want to show the different faces, representations of the Hierophant, from obscure to iconic to nature influences, and how all these elements, even though they're pictorially depicted differently, they still hold the energy of the spiritual knowledge of the Hierophant. And for me, I feel the Hierophant is a card where, I don't know, some people feel like it's a challenging card. It's a card that a lot of people don't like, and I think because it's its association with tradition, conventional, very, very focus on the self spiritually, and working within those restrictions, and having that mentor, having a guide. And I don't think any of those elements are at all negative. It's something that we have to learn and grow from. And so for me, my birth year card is actually the Hierophant. And I'm going to go through this very briefly, and then I'm going to explain how you can figure out your birth year card. The birth year card is your birth date, the month, the date, and the year that you were born. You add those numbers together, and I put it in the description how you can add those up. And the number that you come up with is from the major arcana is your guide, is your card that will guide you throughout your life, your birth card, if you will. Now, your yearly birth card is the birth month, the birth date, but the current year. So we're in 2021, and my card, even though we're in the month of the Hierophant, which is my birth date, major arcana archetype card, the card that I got is, you add, again, the date, the month, the date, and the current year. Add those numbers together, reduce it down, and I think it's best to reduce the numbers down if it's above 21. If your card comes to 21, that represents the world. Some people want to add those two numbers together, 2 and 1, to make it 3, which represents the Empress. But I feel there's no need to reduce it. The number comes up as 21. That is your card. That's just how I see it. If you feel like changing the number, adding those two numbers together because you relate more to another major arcana, like for instance, the Empress, as opposed to the World card, that's your choice. But ideally, I leave it like it is, and I feel it works best for me. So for my card is, I would like to focus this year on the star. And that's my birth year card, my birthday year card. It's kind of hard to figure out what's the best way to describe it. So again, you add the current year to your birth date, birthday and month, add those numbers together. And again, if you want to reduce the numbers down, if it's 21 and up, feel free to do so based on how you relate. But my card this year is the star. So I'll briefly talk about that. And so when you get your birth year card, okay, so for instance, okay, we'll just use my year, for example. I'm the Hierophant. Okay, that's going to be the premise of this year. The guidance that the Hierophant has to provide for me, and also any information, any knowledge that I have to share with others. So the Hierophant you can use as a sign of your practice, your external practice, everything that you've learned, everything that you've built upon, and taking it to the next level. Sharing your ideas, knowledge, information that you feel is so important and that needs to be expressed. And the Hierophant deals with so many different aspects of that. And I feel the Hierophant is an excellent example of a mediator. He's a spiritual mediator. Two things come up with the Hierophant traditional meanings is traditional values and modern values, the conflict between these two. You know, one stuck in the old ways, one that's in the new ways and doesn't really want to listen or reflect back on old ways. It is so important to understand both sides. And I feel with the Hierophant, this guide has an understanding, has the knowledge of the experience that the soul has gone through, the journey. Internally, the High Priestess is the internal side, I feel, of the Hierophant. It's what really connects us and really into the deeper essence of who we are, and understanding that, reaching that inner enlightenment. And then the Hierophant comes in and externalizes that and shares it with people. It's like, I want to share with you something. And that we see with tarot creators. You know, they've gone through experiences, and this is their impulse to share their wisdom, their knowledge. And I feel with the Hierophant, as I explained, being the mediator, you have the Hierophant who has old ways of thinking, but is placed in a modern environment. So it has to adjust and has to attune to what's going on, listening to what's happening, and taking in that information and the knowledge that it's had from its past and meshing those two together. That's the traditional and modern values. How do you put those two different perspectives to understand? It's almost generational, you know, the older generation and the newer generation. There seems to be a gap of where these two generations aren't communicating well. I feel the modern generation is just focused on the self, and that's understandable. You know, you have the technology and we have all of this, but it is so important to realize where this technology came from. You have to start looking back. Okay, no one wants to look in the past, you know, but you have to understand how things came to where it is. And that applies to, you know, our tarot practice and all the different systems that are out there. You know, people who are new to the tarot, this is nothing new. Okay, I think for the most part you understand that. This is thousands of years old. Esoteric system, different forms of metaphysical belief systems. This goes up to thousands of years old in the tarot and the different perspectives. So I feel it's really important. I'm speaking like a Hierophant now, to really understand. Look at the roots. Look at where things came from and how they progress. Find something that that really moves you, and you want to dig more. You want to get into the roots of how the Hierophant came in. You know, maybe go into the history of the major arcana and understanding the different aspects of this archetype and how it's shifted and how it's changed and how it's being represented now versus how it was represented in the past. So I feel the Hierophant will have an influence this year for getting to understand these different perspectives: modern, traditional, conventional, unconventional. So let me show you some of the cards that I have here, and then I'll talk about using your birth year card for this current year. Okay, so I'm not going to go and do a review of any of these, so I'm just going to show and give a brief backdrop of each of these cards. So this is from the Essential Tarot by Pablo Mont. This is a representation. It's very simple, very iconic. Iconic being that there's no storyline, there's no humans, any form of being. It's just a representation. And we see with the Hierophant, in some decks, we see the triple cross. The triple cross is the higher consciousness. The top of the cross is the higher conscious. Lower conscious is this line here. It's the lower part of the cross. And then here in the middle is the conscious state. It's, again, like I was mentioning, merging the knowledge, the awareness, the enlightenment that this Hierophant, that this mentor, that this mediator, that this guide has had. And also going back to how it came there. It came from the unconscious. Spirituality comes from your deepest recesses, the unconscious. And then you have this level, again, of awareness. and you're living in the state right here. The middle line is our present state. So that's conscious. This is below conscious, our subconscious, our inner self. And then here's for enlightenment. And then we have the keys, which is, I guess you could call them the keys to the mysteries of attaining this knowledge through this guide of the Hierophant. So again, this is the Essential Tarot by Pablo Mont. And then the next card, if you saw my previous video, here's the Hierophant representing balance, light and dark, sun and moon energy, fire, earth, water, and air. These four symbols. Balancing the energies of Venus and Mars. And meshing all these tools. I mentioned in the video that the Hierophant is, in a sense, the magician, but spiritually understanding how to use those four suits, the swords, the cups, the wands, and the coins or pentacles. Knowing how to use that, looking into the deeper essence of those tools, not so much the physical, that's a conscious part, but the Hierophant understands how to use those tools magically, if you will. Share each of those suits, each of those tools, the knowledge that comes from it, how to respect it. And I think that's key with the Hierophant is having respect and understanding of each other. Again, traditional, modern. Listening to what the other person has to say. Don't trash it. See both sides. See all sides. And the modern looking to traditional, looking back into the past and learning from it. Okay, this is from the Lamina Tarot. And there we have on the skull for Taurus. Hierophant is ruled by the astrological sign of Taurus. Earth, grounding. And I'm just going to move closely. Here we see aspects of the Kabbalic tree of life, the energy as it moves through all the different Sephira placements, the planets, which we don't see, but it's right there. And then, of course, here we see the many keys. We have like a Sidhu here from India, ultimate sage, the shaman, who shares the knowledge and the experience. And like this, it's a very primal energy card. So people who work with primal energy or animal instincts, getting down to the real core of what's going on. This card, I feel, shares this form of energy. Very basic, stripping everything down, being practical. And this card is from the Dreams of Gaia. And there's two cards. There's the Healer and the Sage. And I felt the Sage was more conducive to the Hierophant. And there is another card. This looks pretty much, this could also look like the Hermit, but there's another card within the first part of this deck that I feel represents more of the Hermit. So this I chose as the Sage, and the name speaks for itself. Let's not look at the numbers, because as I mentioned, the Sage is associated with the number 5. This deck is a non-system deck. Non-system meaning that it doesn't follow the Rider-Waite-Smith way of interpretation, the Doth way of interpreting. This is the creator's own interpretation of this being, of this soul. So again, I pulled the Sage, as again the person who is utilizing the tools. We have knowledge from the owl, wisdom, guidance, the unknown. And then, of course, we have the torch for that light source. I'll try to turn it so it's not so reflective. And then, of course, we have the wolf. Primal, instinctual energy. And following those aspects, and here the sage for earth. So we have two different forms of instinct. One here is more primal, and this one I feel is more spiritual. Listening to that inner self. So that's the sage. This is from The Dreams of Gaia Tarot by Raven Phelan. The next 5 cards, I have a total of 9, so like I said, I'm just going to go through these very quickly. And I'm showing these because I want you to see the different representations, as I mentioned. The Hierophant. This one is from the Forest of Enchantment, which came out about 2 years ago. And the Hierophant is seen as the oldest? Yes, the oldest one. And here is a tree. I'm going to state it's an oak because the oak is seen as one of the older trees in pagan and Wiccan practices, dealing with Mother Earth energy. And where I live, there's quite a few oak trees and Douglas firs and whatnot. But there is something when you look at the oak, especially these older ones, and you see the roots and how powerful, how strong, and hundreds of years old. And just the knowledge, how wise this tree is, how it came from a little sapling and it's grown to something very strong. And the experience that it has from its resources that feeds that particular tree. And the environment that it's in, what it sees, the elements that it experiences. Hopefully not fire, but all those 4 elements, this for earth, air, because plant life, trees, they need oxygen. Water, of course, for nurturing, for sustenance. Sun, for the leaves and getting vitamins from there. I guess I could say the sun would also be fire. But there's just so much knowledge when you see an oak tree in particular. There's some of these larger like sequoia trees, just beautiful. So this is the oldest one. And this is from the Forest of Enchantment to represent the knowledge of the Hierophant, but taken more in the nature perspective. Okay, this is from the Pagan Otherworlds. And here we have the Hierophant saying more of a primitive interpretation of the Hierophant. This is a very earthy card. Very simple. The way it's dressed, the staff that it uses, it's all with the resources of their environment, working with those resources, protecting the body. I could say these are probably skins. And also understanding the energy of its staff. And again, here we see the three prongs coming here to also represent, if you want to see it like that, as the conscious state here in the middle, or depending on which direction you see this, conscious, subconscious, and higher knowledge. And then the hand of benediction, of blessings, passing it down to anyone who will listen. Power of the right hand. The right hand can also represent masculine energy, left hand, feminine energy. Depending on how you see this card, you can reverse it. But I feel it's proper. The left hand, the left side of the body tends to represent the feminine aspect of who we are. And then, as I mentioned, these are the 3 levels of our conscious state, dealing more with our inner selves, our emotions and feelings, intuitive, and then the benediction to send out. Okay, the next card I have here is the Hierophant. From the, I just drew a blank, from the Dreamkeeper's Tarot. The Dreamkeeper Tarot has a very surreal feel throughout its deck and the major arcana. I'm going to just move this closer, and as you see here, the Hierophant has 3 faces. It is aware of everything. Again, like I mentioned, we have the conscious, which is here, subconscious, and higher level. Now, the higher level of knowledge we don't see up here. Another aspect that this could relate to are the phases of the moon, because this is feminine energy that's being represented as the Hierophant. So we're seeing more of a female representation of a spiritual guide. We see the moon in the background. The environment's a little bit more subdued. See the glow of the moon in the back, forest environment. Here we have the staff and we have the snake representing energy and also healing. And I can see here with this Hierophant, we have the female aspect of spirituality. This is probably more of the intuitive side, maybe leaning a little bit more towards the High Priestess, but this person, this soul in particular, has connected with that and now expresses it out to those who are open-minded, open-hearted, and uses that knowledge again to heal. Again, we have an earthy environment. We have the staff for utilizing movement, energy. Again, we have the wand, in a sense, for creativity and healing. So more of the feminine aspect of the Hierophant, the feminine energy. Okay, the next card is from a new deck. A few months ago, I received this deck, and I have not worked with it yet. I want to focus on this deck before the winter season comes to an end. So I have like 2 more months left. And this is from Oak, Ash, and Thorn. And this is the representation of the Hierophant. Completely different from the other decks. But I want to, again, show the different depictions that many deck creators use to represent the Hierophant. Okay, so we see the owl, very similar to, pull this here. There we go, we have the owl here for knowledge and insight. And here, which I like, is we just focus on this animal spirit, holding the key from its beak. It's a little staff here, but it's unlocked. It's open. And I believe here is the directions, north, south, east, west. So utilizing those elements, fire, air, water, earth. And also the Hierophant, considering that this is the owl, this particular representation can represent how the owl communicates. Okay, it's very rare to see an owl flying in the daytime. Normally hear them at night. I can hear them here in the mountains up in the daytime. And I think it was just this past week I saw an owl fly down. I don't know if it went to get something. It definitely wasn't a raven. It wasn't some of the other birds I've seen here, but I think it's an owl. It came down, grabbed something. It opened its wings. I was just like, I think that's an owl. And then it flew away. just another side note, or just a side note. Um, this is a myth, spiritual myth, if you want to take it like this. But if you see an owl, it's supposed to represent a heightened sense of awareness and spirituality, like things are starting to open and move. But I believe the connection is eye to eye. So you physically have to make eye contact. You see this owl fly in front of you and looks at you, and you look at it, that's your connection. So I didn't make eye contact with this one in particular, but just to know that this owl came out of nowhere and disappeared was just quite unique. So going back here, we have the gate, almost the gatekeeper, if you will, to knowledge. Again, we have the directions north, south, east, west, as above, so below, to our left, to our right. The knowledge is all around us. And this is the guide. Unlocking the mysteries to those who are willing to listen and learn from it. Very simple interpretation, the Hierophant. Again, that's from Oak, Ash, and Thorn. The deck is UK based, and I believe it's on its second release. I think in February it comes out, if not already. Okay, and then the last one. This is of a deck that I got around the same time of Oak, Ash, and Thorn. Different representation. This is from the mythical creatures. And this is my first, I could say Marseille influenced deck. The pips are holding strong signs of Marseille influence. But here at the Hierophant, this is what's interesting and slightly off for people who are familiar with, the different depictions of the Hierophant. This is looking like a centaur. In fact, it is the centaur, but the centaur is representative more of Sagittarius. And so the centaur is one skill-wise represents the Hierophant. It's a master of all things. It knows how to utilize the mind. It understands the heart, sensitivity aspect. It knows the movement. It knows how to communicate with people, what to say, how to work with that. And energy-wise, how to send that message out. And this being centaur is also one of healing. It's a healing creature. We also see it being half human and half horse, half beast. It's another way of seeing it. If you look closely, we have roses underneath. And this is a card that's showing triumph. We're seeing the balance that the centaur, represented here as the Hierophant, understands. It's not so much a spiritual influence card, but for me, I feel it's the mastering of all those different elements that I mentioned. The mind, understanding the heart, how to express yourself, how to communicate with people. So that's going to be brief because the depiction here, as I mentioned, I'm trying to get away from it looking at Sagittarius and just focus more on the energy of the centaur and what it means and the message that it has. So that's what we have here, and this is from the Mythical Creatures from Baba Barak Studios. They're based in Ireland. So again, those are the 9 different aspects, 9 different faces, for example, of some of the Hierophants that I represented in various decks. Okay, and as you can see, we have all different perspectives. Culturally, energy-wise, nature-wise. And they all look different, but they still hold the same message. What is used? How do you work with the tools that you have to attain that knowledge, that enlightenment, that spiritual wisdom? Do you look towards a spiritual guide to help you during your journey of self-discovery? I don't. I don't have a guru. The lessons that I get and that I learn come from outside my door and just interacting with people in person and online. And there's a lot to learn. I've been blessed to meet such a wide variety of people. I traveled when I was in my 20s, and I think that really opened the door for me, and it opened the realm as to different cultures, how things differ, and in those differences that you see by traveling around, going into different environments, you learn a little bit about yourself, because you'll come across things that you don't understand, but you're curious about it, or stuff that you don't want to, be part of, and you continue moving. And so the Hierophant too, as I mentioned, is a mediator, but it's also a guide during your journey. Hierophant could be our inner guide, similar to the Hermit. The Hermit has the lamp, that's guiding force. But here with the Hierophant, we actually have some entity, we have a soul, we have an influence that knows and has experienced everything and has a message to share. So let's move to the year card. Okay, so I mentioned this is the birth year of the Hierophant, but my birthday card for this year, from 2021 into 2022, is going to be the Star. My birthday falls in May. So there's two ways of doing this. You can use your birth year card of the current year from the start of the new year, from January to December, or, and I lean more towards this, you can use your birth year card from the start of your birthday going into the following year. So as I mentioned, my birthday is in May. So I really didn't pay much attention to my year card for 2020. I just didn't feel a calling for it. And when I was getting ready to do my year, Wheel of the Year reading, I calculated the numbers to find out what my card was for 2020, my birth card. And it was the Tower. Okay, so here we have all the stuff that's, being, torn down, broken down, and whatnot. And I was actually in the Tower card represents what I was in the middle of, and that we're still going through. Okay, so from May of 2020 into May of 2021, I still have a few more months left, is the Tower card. Okay, so we know the Tower card of, reaching that moment of just no more. Breaking down those things. Tower is also represented by Mars, the planetary influence of Aries, Mars, and Pluto. Pluto is under the influence with Scorpio. So we're really getting inside things. Things are moving, churning, and it's time to really see these things and take action and destroy, to destruct, to break down, to let go. And I didn't pull a card for the Tower, but you know what the Tower card looks like. So I still have a few more months of this, so I could take the energy that I'm working with right now and moving towards my birth month in May, towards 2021 into 2022, which is the Star card. So from May 2021 into 2022, I release I work through anything that needs to be dealt with, and then I open up to the star. And interesting enough, the star card has come up in the last 1 or 2 months with some decks I've been reading. It has popped up, and I couldn't quite understand why that was. And because I've been doing so much work with the astrological signs and planets with the tarot, and I don't have any Aquarius with me in my, I'm sorry, not with me, but in my chart, it's just like, okay, well, maybe this is the sign. This is something that I obviously need to pay more attention of. It's being called to me. So February, actually this week, we move into the sign of Aquarius. I believe it's February 20th into March 20th or 21st. And then we're going to start moving into spring and into the early start of spring into the month of Pisces. So going back, Aquarius. Many of you know that in December we had that great conjunction of opposing planets, Jupiter and Saturn, getting very close together to form a larger glow of the planets. They weren't quite in front of each other, but from a distance it looked like it and had a very nice glow. And Jupiter and Saturn were in Aquarius. And for many astrologers, they see that as the sign of moving into the age of Aquarius. Whatever your belief is, if you don't believe it, that's fine. But I feel in combination with the Hierophant and Aquarius, and there has been talk about Aquarian energy. Aquarius is going to retrograde, I think, in March. I can't remember what planet's retrograding in. But this is a time for Aquarius. I'm going to relate it again to the star. The star is basically showing those attributes of going beyond what we see. Aquarians are seen as innovators. They think outside the box. They don't listen to what other people say when it comes to their own belief systems and their creativity. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so that's sort of understandable, but that's also commendable because you have a sign that has such strong convictions in what it believes in. And also Aquarius is a sign of humanitarianism, how we see society, what changes can be made. So in relation to the star card being ruled by Aquarius and held in the planet of Uranus, Uranus is it's a planet of unexpected actions, sudden changes and stuff like that. So a few people have been discussing that this year we could be seeing some unexpected shifts in technology into things that will maybe change the way that we work and use the internet, which I think is wonderful. But here, related to the Hierophant, okay, remember the Hierophant is my tarot birth card, and we're in that year, 2021, and the influence I have of the star. So the star is a very spiritual centered card as well, because it does think outside the box, and it is maybe not obviously attaining higher enlightenment, but to others, when we see innovative creators, that it's just like, how did they come up with this idea? You know, it's so outlandish, but it works. It makes sense. And I think that's where the relationship with the Hierophant and the star come together. Okay, the Hierophant is a spiritually enlightened soul and has a message to share. The star is similar. The star sees things in a different way, unconventional than what other people see, and expresses it in its own manner. Some of it can be radical actions, But when those actions, if they're put into careful place, okay, with Saturn in Aquarius right now, Jupiter opposing energies, expansive and contracting, if the Aquarius influence of the star, take this expansive influence of Jupiter and centering it, focusing on your ideas and whatnot, and carefully, it is an air sign, and carefully communicating it so that people will listen, not think that you're so eccentric or off the wall, you will pique the interest and gain the support of people in a larger community. So again, it's almost like the star is being channeled through the Hierophant to get its message across. It has an unconventional, out of the ordinary way of seeing things. Now it's time to express it and release it. So we'll see in May, my birthday, birth month, between now and May, and also my Wheel of the Year reading, what changes am I going to be experiencing? Okay, the Wheel of the Year gave me insight for the first 6 months that spiritually I am growing. There are some things that are shifting, but it feels like it's moving in the right direction. And I've been getting that sense from previous readings when I pull major arcana cards, when I do meditation cards. I've been getting cards that are related to spirituality, visionary thinking, if you will. I'm not saying I'm a visionary, but seeing things differently. I do feel I have some out of left field perspectives on things. So maybe this will be applicable for this year and for the next few months when it comes to the Year of the Hierophant and moving from the Tower card into the awareness from that experience into the star. And balancing intuitively and understanding that and expressing it, sharing it to other people. You see the star card. It's almost similar to Temperance. One foot is leaning on the earth, the other foot is in the water, pouring alchemically, opposing energies, working with those energies. This is the star card, working with those energies, merging them into one until they become one. And that concept forms, and it's like, yes, this is where it is. And you send the message out. So again, like I said, the star is almost being channeled through the Hierophant. So that will be very interesting to see what will come up. So again, just to recap, to do your birth card for the major arcana archetype, you add your birth year, the date, and the birth date and the month. Add those numbers together. If it's 21 and higher, like if it's 26, reduce those numbers down because the major arcana only goes up to 21. Reduce those numbers down. So like I said, if it was 26, that would be 8. Okay, and you would use that card of influence as your birth card. That's overall your guide, your spiritual makeup, if you will. And then each year, you do the same thing. At the birthday, birth month, but only use the current year. And you could do this in reflection. You can look in the past few years and add that year's date to your birth date and just see how that year went. And you'll also find your birth year card in relation, well, I got backwards, sorry. You will use your birth card in relation to that year and then your birth date as your card of guidance for that year. Okay, so to clarify, so let's say a few years ago it was the year of the devil. Okay, you add up your numbers and it comes to It comes through the magician for your birthday year. Work with those two energies, the devil and the magician. Look at those aspects of that archetype, which is your birth year card, and apply it to your birth date of that year. It may sound confusing, but all the way you can add it up, again, is added in the description. And use those influences, you know. And for many, they will end up with 3 different sets of cards, archetypes to guide them through the year. So let's say your birth card is the devil. You add up the year, okay? And let's say it's the devil, just the year itself. Like if it was 1999, you add those numbers together, and whatever those numbers come to, that is the major arcana archetype. And then for your year card during that year, 1999, you do your birth date, month. I have to repeat this, make sure you understand. In that current year, add those numbers together. And that's your birth year card for guidance. So that could be different, okay? You can have a devil year. Your card of guidance, I'm going to change it up as the Wheel of Fortune. And then your birth year card is the Magician. So you will work with those 3 attributes. Okay. But for me, it's only 2 for this year because the Hierophant is my birth year card. And I have the Star card that'll lead me from 2021 into 2022. I'm transitioning right now from the Tower energy to the Star. I'm not going to even focus on the Star. I'll work on those energies. Anything that needs to be broken down is still in process. Okay, so sorry that went on too long. I just want to make sure that that's understood. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. You can reach me through my website, through Instagram. I do readings, so feel free to connect with me if you enjoy the information that I have to share with you. I'm feeling more comfortable the more I do videos here and sharing the information that I have, and have plenty more to share with you. I think that's the Hierophant and the Star coming into play. I feel very strongly about this year and what I have to share with people. And I feel that's the key word. I want to share my information, knowledge with those who are willing to listen, be open-minded, exchange information, because as a Hierophant, as the guide, you also learn from other people. So a mentor can always be the student, and that's how we came from anyhow. We started off as students, not knowing very little or knowing anything, and listening and bringing up that knowledge and working in a path that feels right and following with it and then growing. And eventually, not a lot of people are able to do this, become a master in skill in expressing the knowledge that they have. So we'll see where that leads us. Alrighty, so that's a breakdown of the Hierophant, how to select your birth year card with the current year, and also your birth year card with the current year. It's all in the description, and how these cards can conflict but also support each other. I believe opposite energy cards are something to learn from. But one is lacking energy-wise, the other card can support, and vice versa. And again, with the Hierophant, we're dealing with traditional, modern values, the differences between those two, and meshing these together, putting together that mindset, that way of thinking. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I will be back again with a few more videos. I have my decan reading for Aquarius coming up in a few days. So we are moving out of Capricorn and heading into the first decan of Aquarius. And so I will express that in in video form in a few days. And that'll take place on the 21st for the first decan. All right. Have a wonderful day, evening. Feel free to contact me, leave comments, and I will be in touch again very soon.